these are fresh ones. Yeah, I know, you're a happy dog. Dinar is here. Mm. Nice drip, Michael. It's just people working on the building. They're not going to come play with you. You silly dog. You found a version of it? Good.
So, really, we can annotate that in different ways.
Yeah.
It could be a comma, it can be like forward slash, it could be just straightforward two lines. It's a break in verse when one phrase ends and the following phrase begins.
Okay. It seemed like we should do the one that Alec thought. Alec and his other composer friend that were over both understood what he meant when he did that slash slash thing.
Forward slash.
Yeah. That seemed to be the like understood form.
And he said in between the two lines.
Do we still have his? He made a.
Drawing.
Yeah. Can you see if it's in Trello or in any emails? If not, you're going to have to find some examples of it. Can you move this out of the way? I don't want to touch it with my hands. Are you a little dog? Are you a little dog? That dog is really happy. Are you having trouble finding
Yeah.
any reference to it?
I wonder if you drew that to show me.
I think that he drew it to show me
On the thing, right?
on the thing, and I probably shared that with you at the time, and I don't know if we have a copy of that anymore. So I would say it probably makes most sense to try to.
It should be in between, but I'm confused because here it says that it should be on the bars.
Uh-huh.
But I remember it being in between two lines.
Let me see. Let me see what it says.
So this is like the organically thought.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like a break instead of continuation. So also like that's why it's continuing because it's breaking.
Wait a second. This is different. A caesura probably means there's a pause, a long pause, and then it continues up later, right?
It can be a short breath, a breath.
Right, but it's not a breath. This is a breath. We're talking about a continuation. What it means is that it means something different. It means that the one line of music.
I'm confused about that because remember, like the fact that there's no line in between. I think that symbolizes that there's no line in between. But if there's no line in between, you don't need to even cross it out. You know what I mean?
Oh, I see what you mean.
That's why I was confused because usually if there's a line in between, that means that they're played at the same time. But if there is no line, it means that it's actually you have to read it like that. That's why, and I cannot find it that way.
So then, fuck it. I understand what you're saying.
Or maybe you can ask Alex again and he can send you.
No, it's okay. I think that if we've spent all this time trying to figure out what it is and we can't find it, that means that Alec is in a really specialized world.
Probably.
And I think we should just move forward.
Okay. So the size was good, right? The small one.
The size was fine. What ends up happening is for some reason, it was exporting at 200 DPI, and the file size was like 30 inches, 20 inches by 30 inches or something like that. But the way I have figured out how to import it into InDesign, it just treats it as a vector, and it scales it to the size that it needs to be scaled to. So the final size is actually 5.5 by 7.5, but 5 by 7 scales to that without any problems.
Okay. So what I need to do is.
Just export it, I think. Export it without the numbers, because the numbers are in the wrong place. They need to be inserted a little bit tighter, and I'll do that in InDesign.
To confirm, I'm not doing any changes to resolution.
No, what worked last time was fine. I mean, because resolution was. I mean, it's a vector file, right? So there's nearly, like, resolution is a pretend number.
Yeah, true. But the ratio is good.
The ratio is good, which is the most important thing. Basically, the way I'm ingesting them, it ignores resolution, and it just scales it to fit. Um, is it exporting right now?
I'm gonna see.
Okay. When it starts, I'll start talking about something else. But just let me know. I'm sorry, what'd you say? Okay. Um, the first page for that, I remember, I couldn't find it, but I remember we made a mock-up of the first page, did we not?
For,
Impossible Score.
I mean, first page with a title and everything.
Yeah, the like conventional format with, because the first page is only at like 2/3 of the way up. We save space for title and stuff. Do you know where the mock-up was for that?
You couldn't find it?
I couldn't find it. I didn't look that hard, but I didn't. Do you remember a mock-up for that? No, you don't. Okay, so then maybe there isn't one.
I remember we looked at the examples.
Yeah. Maybe give it like a couple minutes to see if you can find it, and if you can't, don't worry about it. And then
I think we did the first page for this theatrical, the play. I remember that.
we definitely did that, because that one's done. I, for some reason, thought we had done it for this one. But if we haven't, we haven't. So, some updates on the mapping process. I have. Did I send that to you?
No.
Oh, let me send it to you. Hold on a second. What is her name? Okay, I just sent you a chat. This is essentially the message I sent on to the editor. I was able to use the yearly totals to build a map. I have one of the I can't remember how much of this was something that I sort of started to dig into after before or after you stepped back. But one of the big challenges was units, right? Like what the scale was. And what I ended up settling on, what was logical to me, was some sort of like, I started with a base 2 scale, but what's apparently statistically correct is just a logarithmic scale. A logarithmic scale. So, little dog, somebody's eating lunch, and you can't be up there when lunch is being eaten by human people. So I settled on a scale that was 1, 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000.
Okay.
That is apparently a normal way of normalizing non-normal data. So data that doesn't, right, there's a lot of use of the word normal, but that's like, what I've learned is that there are many right ways. You just have to do one, you have to just do something that is one of the standard ways in which people do it in the field. Like, there's no fixed way in which you can you sort things. You just have to follow one of the accepted ways and state it and sort of justify it. So logarithmic data, that's the first thing that is, I think, relevant. The other thing is that I really wasn't ever able to get anyone to explain to me how I correlate things spatially. But I was told that the place you start is with your eyes. So basically, I'm not going to try to make any kind of numerical claims of spatial correlation. I'm merely going to say, you can see with your eyes there is a significant trough through, from like North Dakota to West Texas. Like, this is obvious.
I mean, that's the same, the visualization.
Yeah. And then I'm going to
And are you gonna, I didn't read it yet, so.
That's one thing, and then there's generally a weighted, there's a total, which is weighted, and it is, you can see like by the year, and what you actually see is things remain strikingly consistent. Very few places come in and out with any substantial variation.
I love how in yearly, like, Tillman,
It's what you say? It's what?
with the slider.
Yeah, it starts out with, you can see it. The thing that you can see, which is something that I knew existed, but like, it really helps to see it, which is, the overall editing activity peaked in 2008 and 9. And like, there's plenty of research on that. That's not new news. But what is sort of new news is just seeing how that happened and where that happened.
What happened?
What do you mean, what happened?
I'm not
Look at the slider. Look at the one with the slider,
Mm-hmm.
and follow it through from 2002 to 2019, and you'll see that it gets the darkest. The areas are darkest around 2008 and 9.
Yeah, I see it.
So that was when editing activity was at its highest.
Oh, it was a Wikipedia thing.
Wikipedia knows that. That's been a known. That's a
I
known.
thought it was like a political event, or there was some event that caused it. That's why I was like, did something happen with Wikipedia?
No, it was that. It was just that it was. People were really into it. There's a lot of research as to why editing has dropped off. I mean, one of the theories is that Wikipedia has developed a really toxic culture, which I've personally experienced. And it is not friendly to newcomers. Basically, 2008, 2005 through 2006, 7, everyone was new, and they sort of established their own little culture, and people who came afterwards were not as welcome. That's sort of the general theory of what's happened. But another sort of secondary theory is that all the really important articles were written or created during that time. So some people say, well, there's just like not, people weren't that interested after the articles about every president, you know, and every battle in World War II and all that kind of stuff that a lot of Wikipedian editors really care about was all created during that period. And so they did not, people just got bored. Stop editing. These are all theories, but what you can see it, and you can see.
Maybe it's especially when you move fast, it's a really slow type.
Mm-hmm.
When you move fast, like you can see the peak.
Mm-hmm. So, and then with the world.
Wait, the weighted?
Hmm?
How about the weighted? What was it?
The weighted one is in quintiles, like the 20% least active, 20%
Household. Okay.
by household. So that one is so what you can see, what that highlights is the areas of low activity and a high activity. And sort of.
It's interesting that even in weighted, you can see that the middle part is the.
Exactly. That's what's significant. Is it's very clear that there is this area that's absent, and that is an area that matches up with consistent conservative political beliefs, like, and so that is a significant. That is significance a special word. I've learned that I can't use the word significant. That is because it means something in statistics, and I haven't proven it through some sort of calculation.
Obvious? Is that word?
Evident.
Evident?
That is sort of, it's something that's evident through that visualization that there's a pattern there. There's something that is associated. What is also interesting and evident is that other areas that are the areas that essentially historically have defined the political balance of this country, Ohio and Florida. You're familiar with all this. You've been here long enough to know about this country's obsession with the political beliefs of Ohio and Florida. Edit evenly across the whole state. In Florida, there's a gap in the Panhandle, which is a conservative area. But the rest of Florida, which is, which has a range, also edits sort of consistently. Ohio edits consistently.
Yeah, Ohio is like the green area between reds.
Yeah. So Ohio edits consistently, and I think Indiana edits as well, which is a conservative state. So that's one interesting thing. And also, if you look at California and New York State, so you've been upstate.
Yeah.
You know a little bit of what it's like up there. What's that?
I do.
Do you?
Yeah, I actually experienced it firsthand.
Exactly. And so it is a conservative, often small-minded, not cosmopolitan, often very racist place. And yet, look at how much editing there is up there. It's a lot of editing. Look at California. California, really up until the last 4 years, California was still a divided state. All the areas south of California were very conservative, and all of the areas on the east side of the state were very conservative. Northern California gets a little bit more complicated because it's got like hippies up there, but also ranchers. There's some reds up in Northern California. But if you look at, in particular, like Orange County and San Diego are areas that are traditionally Republican strongholds. That's changed a lot in the last 4 years, but this data reflects a much longer period. It's the area south of LA. It's the suburbs. It's the Long Island of Los Angeles. How's that? That area also edits, which sort of points to the theory that, the way I'm going to probably write it up is that the other thing is I saw a map of broadband that I need to replicate, but I saw a broadband map that the Times had. The way I had done broadband, I don't think I'd actually mapped it yet, but I think that there's multiple ways of describing what broadband is, and I think that the Times used a more aggressive measure. Like, the one that I was using from the community household survey was more inclusive. Like, you could have, the kind of DSL connection that you might have had in 2003 or 4, and that would be considered broadband, whereas the one that the Times did, it was a much higher threshold. It was something more like, hello? It was something more like what you would have expected to have here in New York, like about 4 or 5 years ago. And when you look at that map,
I'm looking at the broadband availability map.
Yeah.
By the Federal Communications Commission.
I haven't gone into full detail on it, but I believe that if you filter that, Max, come. When you filter it, it it in some cases matches the editing activity. It basically corresponds to that trough in the Dakotas through West Texas. So that's basically, I can, with some legitimacy say that you can track political beliefs to the absence of editing. So conservative areas don't participate. Like the areas that don't participate tend to be conservative, but it doesn't, just because it's conservative doesn't mean that it doesn't participate. And then the other interesting thing is I think that like the tribal areas, the like First Nations Indian reservations, American Indian reservations, are all low broadband access areas, and therefore they are also totally non-editing areas. So,
I'm just looking at the background right now.
yeah,
Also, is there like a year by year kind of thing?
yeah. So, anyway, those are some of the things that I'm going to say. In terms of the world, it's kind of the least interesting, actually. The two things that I think are interesting are, I guess there's three things that are interesting.
The world with the years?
Have I done the world with the years?
Yeah.
No, I haven't.
Were we able to do it? We were not able to do it, right?
I don't know. Do I have that data? Did you make that data?
No, I don't think so.
I don't think you did. And I'm not.
I should have. I should have, shouldn't I? Yeah, I should have. Because it's every edit per year, right?
Yeah, I guess I'm not from what I've seen from.
I wonder, like, it's interesting to see in the banned areas.
Yeah, that could be interesting. It could be interesting to see Turkey and China sort of just drop out. But I wonder. So one of the things that I can observe in the year version is the U.S. is an order of magnitude more than any other country. Like the U.S. has like 22 million edits, and the British have like 5 million edits. They're the second largest. Maybe it's 10 million edits for the U.S., but it's significantly larger.
I think here in this world map,
Yeah.
I don't see how many edits. I see the colors, but
If you hover over it, it'll show you.
it shows population. Is that the edits?
Does it say population?
Yeah, it says
What does the U.S. one say?
19 million.
Yeah. So I just didn't change that. I just didn't change that word.
Oh, okay. So those are the edits.
Yeah, those are the edits. And so you can see the British is like 5, right? So like on the one hand, that says this is so American, right? But the other really interesting thing that I did, and this isn't on there.
So we did look at the English Wikipedia.
We only looked at English Wikipedia, but get this. I did a map, I sort of broke it down and did a really, really basic Excel style pie chart. And the top 10 countries contribute about half of the content. But it's a long tail situation, so all the rest of them contribute the other half of the content. If you look at it in terms of total edits, English is only like the U.S. is only like 10%, 5%. Because there's so many other people. So the other thing that I want to try to maybe do is and this is I think not something you have to be involved in. This is just me. My analyses is to
North Korea 12?
exactly. So that's one of the things I wanted to talk about. I want to find out all those IPs. Can you pull all those IPs?
For North Korea?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that's interesting. But
You want to look at,
I wanna see the countries for which English is an official language versus the countries for which English is not an official language. For example, India is the third largest contributor to English Wikipedia after the UK.
wow.
But it's not an official language. English is not.
So,
Is English an official language of India?
it's, yeah, a lot of people who learn there, it's.
I know a lot of people learn. What's that?
Colony,
I know, but is it an official language? Do you know what I mean by that?
yeah, I know.
Like, is English an official language of Turkey? No.
It's a second language.
But it's a second language. A lot of people know it, but it's not a governmental official language. You can't complete documents in the country. You can't submit an application for university, well, maybe in university, but you can't submit an application for a visa in English, can you? As a Turkish citizen?
In English?
You can't go into court and argue in the court of law in English.
I don't think so.
No. Whereas, like in France, or excuse me, in Canada, French and English.
It says yes, but also I'm not sure.
Hmm.
To do research, but like,
It says yes?
yeah.
Okay, so then maybe I'm wrong. But I want to find some way of trying to demarcate that.
Apparently there's no official language declared by the India, by India.
Okay.
Um,
Anyway,
I think Hindi and English are official of some Indian states.
of some Indian states. I guess what I want to try to articulate is the way, the degree to which this is, I mean, it's both the way that English has become a global language, like you and I are having a conversation in English, not in French. But also the way in which this project is a global project, even English Wikipedia. So that's the rough update on things. What I need is, I think I wrote it in there, the final world and the final total US. Because I don't think that either of the two ones I've been working with, those are from like months ago, they don't have the proxies removed and we don't know if they're the correct things.
Wait, which ones don't have the processing?
The total US, I have yearly US, I don't have total US, correct?
Yeah, you don't have to.
So I want total US and I want total global, and I also want individually, I want every North Korean IP address and what the edits were.
Also, the total US, total global, isn't that the total global already? Or do you want the yearly global?
I want the total global, but the one that I have is from months ago and it doesn't have the proxies removed. It will not look significantly different. It's more a matter of like process fetishism. It's more a matter of like being able to say, I have mitigated this potential, experimental design flaw. I have accounted for it.
Let me see
You can just prop, get back in where? Do you want to go all the way out, or you just want to go
I wanna go to the bathroom.
bathroom? Yeah, you can just prop the door. I'm gonna go do that too. Wash these out.